I'm Dale Smith for Looney Politics, and the Environment Commissioner released a report last week on the government's net zero goals and found that with 6 years left to the 2030 target, there's still a lot of work to do, and that it doesn't look like they'll be able to meet the target or the reduction targets as it stands. Part of this is because programs are slow to be implemented. Part of this is because there's not a lot of good data in terms of what is working and what is not working. But the overall message has been keep going. This is an important thing, and it's important that the government keep the measures or look at ways of speeding up and trying to get to those targets as they can. But that isn't the message that the Conservatives took away from it. They've spent the time since the report essentially concern trolling, saying, emissions reductions are important, but this isn't, your program isn't working, you're not going to meet any of your targets, so therefore scrap the carbon levy and give up. Interestingly to note, however, the only target that the government, that this current government has set was the 2030 target, which they are still working towards. Any other targets that have been missed were targets that the Conservative government previously had agreed to on an aspirational basis and then did nothing about. So what I find is particularly interesting about this tactic is this defeatist notion that if you're not going to make the target as it is, then don't even bother. And that's kind of like saying, I'm not going to finish losing the 20 pounds I wanted to by the end of the year, so I'm just going to sit on the couch and eat a bag of cookies instead of, the 16, 17, 18 pounds that you might have lost, apparently not being worth it. And that's kind of how they seem to be looking at emissions reductions. Any reductions are important, and carbon pricing is an important way of helping to achieve those goals. But in a certain level, a sense of obstinance, they are ignoring the success that it does have in order to instead promote this agenda of somehow that Canadian LNG will displace coal internationally and we will somehow be given credit for this, for emissions reductions, which is not how any of this is going to work, and which has no actual sound economic basis given the economics of LNG, particularly on the East Coast, which they seem to want to also bring about, but that's never going to happen under the current economic situation. So I think it's important that we do hold the government to account for not meeting the targets that they said they were. I think it's important to keep pressing on because emissions reductions are important. And it's also important not to have this defeatist attitude that if we're not going to make this target, then we might as well give up. For Looney Politics, I'm Dale Smith.